So for our closing presentation of Finovx Middle East Day 1, I would like to welcome back to the stage Sam Everington, CEO of Engine by Sterling. Sam will end the day with a presentation on how to be agile in digital banking. Following by Sam's presentation, we will have the Finovx Middle East Awards that I would be presenting to you. So Sam, please.
Am I on? Can you hear me? Yep. Excellent. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here in this beautiful country. I'm Sam Everington from Starling Bank. You saw me very briefly earlier. But I joined Starling about 6 years ago, back when it was a tiny startup, to lead the teams building the mobile apps and the APIs, and then became responsible for product and product design, and now I run the technology side of the business. If I can figure out how to use this thing to change forward. There we go, perfect. So I thought I'd start by giving a bit of an introduction to Starling. I'm aware we're only a retail and SME bank operating in the UK, so a lot of you have probably never heard of us and are wondering why I'm here talking to you today. So Starling was founded back in 2014 by a lady called Anne Bowden. She's not your typical tech founder, I think it's fair to say. She has a 30-year career in a number of major roles at big banks and insurance companies around the world. But fundamentally, she reached the point of being frustrated with the banks in Europe and their inability to change and respond to the needs and expectations of customers. They'd become scared of change, typically blaming compliance and regulations as the reason why they couldn't do anything. But I think actually it's a historic underinvestment and a focus on short-term gains over long-term viability. So ultimately, she quit her job and set about building a new bank from scratch, which is the business that's become Starling. So we launched just over 5 years ago into the market, and I think it's fair to say we've seen some real success and progress in that time. We now have more than 3 million accounts, of which 500,000 plus are business customers, and it's in the SME side that I think we've probably seen real success. We've got an 8% market share in the UK in 4 years, and to put that into context, HSBC has about 12% today, and we've got about half the share of Barclays. And we've done that not by giving things away. We've actually built a sustainable business fairly uniquely in the world of fintech. In Europe and the US, we have a profitable business. So we've been making money every month for 2 years now, turning over, I think, our annualized profit rate something like 90 million now. So the logical question that always follows at that point is, how have we done this? Why is Starling making money when so many fintechs are struggling? I think it's important to note here that we haven't actually tried to reinvent the business model. There's a perception in Europe and the US and the tech industry that the banking is broken, banks are going to fail and become invisible and ultimately disappear. And that's overlooking the fact that a lot of these institutions have been around for hundreds of years. They've changed and adapted a lot before, and they're hugely profitable too. They have the money to take on these problems when they need to. And so fundamentally, Starling makes money like a bank. It is a fully licensed bank. And so we make money by holding customers' deposits, by lending those deposits out to other people through the net interest margin, and through the fees and commissions we earn, interchanges and charges for payments and that kind of thing. So we do have a line of kind of subscription add-on products, but they're a very small part of the revenue. And the lending book is a very traditional lending book as well. It's more than half residential mortgages, a mix of owner-occupied and buy-to-let, and the rest is made up of SME and retail term loans. Ooh, if I find that go too far. So if we've got a traditional product set and a traditional business, how have we managed to gain market share? Why are people switching to us at all? I ran product design for 3 years, so I'd love to stand here and say we're the most switched to bank in the UK because we have a very compelling and delightful proposition and set of user experiences, but I can't. That's honestly not true. Consumers don't like dealing with their banking, they don't like dealing with their finances, and they believe fundamentally that all banks are pretty much the same, and so you need a really compelling hook to get them to try you out, to see that something can be different. And one of those levers we've chosen to pull is cost, fundamentally charging the customers less. But you can only do that in a sustainable and profitable business if you can keep control of your operating costs to operate at a lower model than the competitors out there. So we have a real focus on automation and self-service, what I would describe as being truly digitally native. And by that, I mean the mobile phone, that the app that we offer is our most capable channel. In a traditional bank, the branch is the place you can do everything, and the contact center can do most things. and then online, and finally mobile as your weakest. And we're the complete inversion of this. The mobile is the only place our customers can do everything. To give you an example of that, if you think of something like making a higher value payment, if you're getting married or you're putting money down on your first house, in every other bank in Britain, there's limits on payments through digital channels, and at that point you have to go into branch, or if you're lucky, they might be able to do it over the telephone. We don't have payment limits on digital channels, quite uniquely. And if you work in risk and controls or financial crime, you might be getting nervous at this point. But if you think through that journey the customer would go through in branch, what are the staff there trying to do? They're trying to understand why the customer thinks they're making this payment, where they got hold of those account details from, is anyone pressuring them into doing so? They may even ask for documents to do that. You can deliver all of that experience digitally at the customer's convenience. So when you instruct a payment through our platform, the system's assessing the risk in it, deciding if we need to ask you questions. If we do, it assesses the risk and the answers. And it may then asynchronously also send it to a human for final review. But that doesn't require the customer to be sat there waiting. And it's with experiences like that you can run a very self-service, highly automated business without compromising ultimately on trust and customer satisfaction. Actually, it's more delightful for customers. They can do things whenever they want without waiting. And those experiences where the system is guiding them through and clearly laying out steps to protect their money builds trust as well. And so that combination has let us run at a lower operating cost to everyone, but actually an oddity of the UK market is that the government twice a year runs an annual survey to assess satisfaction in banks as part of an encouragement to switch, and we all have to, every other bank has to stick it on the wall in their branches and things to say, our service is here, but actually you could be getting services ranked up here. And since entering those surveys, Starling's been sat squarely at the top, which is a really nice independent measure of what we're doing for satisfaction. So to deliver on this capability, back in 2016, when there were 20 of us or so in a room, we needed a really capable technology platform that would enable the business and give it the flexibility and agility we needed to meet customer expectations. So ultimately, we set about building it ourselves, but before we did this, it's a pretty major undertaking to do. We really did look at everything in the market, the traditional core systems, which are functionally very capable, but ultimately quite complex underneath, and although they've been ported to the cloud, they're not really designed and engineered for that kind of real-time cloud-native operations, through to the neo-cores that just aren't mature enough in terms of product set and scale that they're going to hit. And so eventually we settled on hiring and building an engineering culture, actually very akin to what Saud was talking about earlier. I really enjoyed his talk. It was very refreshing to hear that coming from a major bank in a region instead. And so when I say we built everything fundamentally from the origination, application capture, to the ledgers, the payment processing, the card processing, and the financial crime systems, it's all running now on the technology platform that we call Engine, which earlier this year we split out into a separate business, because I think we've reached the point of running technology for 20, 25 other institutions on the platform as well. So delay, I'm going to go again. So why did we care so much about this kind of flexibility of the platform, the ability to innovate? Fundamentally, if you want to grab market share from other people's, you need to really deliver for customers, meet and exceed their expectations in a way other organizations can't. And we couldn't have that level of responsiveness to do the right thing for customers, as we'd put it, if the platform was holding us back. And so a lot of companies talk today about being customer-centric, customer-obsessed, customer-first, but I always like to probe them at that point on what do they really mean by this? Could they give examples of decisions they've made that are genuinely in the interest of the customer, that have no viable business case, arguably, don't make any sense for the business at all? It's not that I'm saying companies shouldn't make money. That's a terrible idea. I've been in a loss-making startup in the early days, living kind of venture capital round to venture capital round, and that isn't long-term stable for anyone, the staff or the customers. But there are moments where you have choices and you can make a decision that puts customer interests ahead of your own, rearrange your roadmap at short notice to deliver something they need, that you can deliver it without huge cost, but will ultimately never make money at the expense of the things you plan to do, growth and revenue-raising initiatives, typically. And so a good example of this that took us all by surprise, I guess, is the pandemic hitting a couple of years ago. While I think here in the Emirates you had a pretty well-managed and pretty successful journey through the pandemic. Britain decided to take a slightly more tumultuous route through this, and so we went from next to no restrictions to near total lockdown pretty much overnight, surprising everyone. We could only leave our homes for essential grocery and medical shopping, and actually the most vulnerable were advised to stay home the entire time and to get someone else to do those kind of things on their behalf. And the country responded pretty admirably to this, actually. A nationwide network of volunteers sprung up to go shopping on people's behalves. Strangers were going out and buying essentials for the people who live nearby. But this presented a real problem for people. If you think of our vulnerable customers, how do they pay someone to go shopping on their behalf? Most of us don't keep sufficient cash in our house to pay for our expenses for weeks or months on end. And also, getting someone to hand over cash to a stranger at their front door is a pretty risky thing to do. What are the odds they're actually going to come back and that fraudsters wouldn't take advantage of this opportunity, given how they take advantage of absolutely everything else? And so we wanted to deliver something that really solved this problem for our customers, and that's the product we eventually developed that we called our connected card. So very simply, the connected card is an additional debit card you can order on your personal current account. It has its own card details and its own PIN, and the account holder, controls the spending, how much money is available to it, and where it can be used, and we preloaded them with a bunch of sensible restrictions to stop the people shopping on your behalf using it to take out cash, shopping online, that kind of thing. We restricted the stores where it could be used. And we took this whole thing from idea to production, and by that I mean printing thousands of cards a day. It took off more than maybe we'd anticipated in 2 weeks, and we could only do that because we decided it mattered. We stopped what we were working on, the things that were in the longer-term business plan, and did a thing that really made sense for customers, the right thing by them, but I had no business case. Clearly, we lose money on those cards. We're always going to lose money on those cards. But we had an organization that was set up to be agile, that it could respond like that and get a pretty major product launch that changed everything from card authorizers to the ledgers, right the way through to the customer experience channel, done and live in a couple of weeks. And there's plenty of other examples we could talk through on this. So, as you're probably guessing, and as Saud was discussing earlier, agility is far more than just the technology platform and the way of working that you've put together. You really need to establish a culture and an environment that encourages and thrives in change. And that's what we've worked very hard to do for the last few years. So, to kind of try and distill how we've done that in a few key themes. The first principle we put together is probably actually the most challenging for anyone in a leadership position. It's very comfortable to operate in a world where you have detailed plans and schedules and prioritized lists and estimates for how long everything's going to take. You know what's going on, you know what people are going to do, and you feel like you have a level of oversight and control. But I would challenge yourself to think it through. When do you really know exactly what you want and what your customers are going to want? And can you actually write all your requirements down up front, and when have your estimates proved to be factually accurate and exactly what you were looking for? And so we changed this on its head effectively, and as leaders now we set a bunch of aims and principles and targets that we're working for that we think are kind of ambitious but achievable, and then we very much empower the individual teams responsible for areas of our business to make the decisions, to decide how we're going to get there. And the output of that's been quite transformational. What you very quickly get is a whole bunch of little improvements and benefits in your product that you wouldn't have thought for. You're never going to be able to write a business case for them. The time to estimate and plan them is bigger than the time to get them done. But the product people and the engineers know customers want them. They know they could do them easily. And given the freedom to make the choice, they just get them done and get them out there. What you also find is you make a bunch of mistakes. You're going to do things wrong. You're going to try things out, and they don't go the way you expect. But those failures are fine. They happen quickly, the teams realize what's going on, and we've generally found we lose less money just abandoning something and going away from it than we would have spent trying to avoid the problem occurring in the first place. And finally, you get to move forward at a much, much greater pace. With these teams delivering lots of little things iteratively all the time, they're evolving their product solution as they go. And so we never quite know what the final result's going to look like, and we certainly don't know where the minimum version of it's going to be. It's something that our perception on it changes a lot. I think that the challenge I always give is it better than nothing? Is putting out what we have now better than the customers having nothing, which is where they are today? And that is a remarkably low bar of minimal product at times. And so by doing this, we get products our customers really, really want and are really going to use much faster. The second principle is a perception that's very prevalent in banks in Europe and the US especially, which is that change is a risk and it needs to be managed and controlled and minimized as far as possible. And generally, regulators and risk and compliance departments are blamed for this, but regulators themselves are pretty regularly a source of change that you have to carry out. When you look at them, what they really care about is outcomes for customers. Are you maintaining service? Are you doing the right thing? And most of that necessitates an ability to change. And so we have completely the opposite perception on change. At Starling, not changing is a risk, and it's very quickly where we get concerned. To put that into context, if a team or a part of our business goes a day or two without putting a change live to production, we're getting concerned about it, because you're very quickly reaching the point where the scale of change that has built up is getting too large, that no individual actually involved in signing off the release process, we still have release processes and controls, being a bank, genuinely understands what they're signing off and what the risk the business is taking. And so we're very much the other way, that we actually change the core systems probably 30 or 40 times a day across the different areas, in peak times, in the middle of the day, under load. And by doing this, we ultimately run a better service for our business. The risk of each change is lower, and we offer a better service for customers. This is going to make me look very geeky, but probably my favorite paper, the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, has published in the last few years, because I like to read them, is one on change management. They did a survey of all the banks in the UK and analysed their approaches to change and the impacts these have had. And the regulator themselves in the UK has now concluded that banks that operate in this way, lots of small incremental change, ultimately run at a lower risk and deliver better outcomes for customers. And for something we've been doing for a few years, I really enjoyed reading that. And the third key cultural difference is our approach to failure. In most technology departments, banks are asked almost to do the impossible, to run a perfect system that never goes wrong. But no human and no human-enabled process is infallible, and no piece of technology, no hardware will stay on forever. And so we run the business very much the other way around, which is everything we're building, everything we're designing and developing, we're working on the assumption it is going to fail in the middle of operation while it's doing whatever it's doing, and everything around it is going to fail and may well not be available at that moment. And if you do that, you develop a system that is ultimately highly automated to identifying and isolating failure, effectively just queuing the traffic around it, waiting for that component of the service to be restored, and then it plays everything in and catches it up. And this is really impactful. It gives you this ability to move much faster, but also it fundamentally maintains a much better service for your end customer. I think one of the stats I'm very proud of is in the UK, you weirdly have to report outages publicly, effectively, under PSD2. And we're the only significant operator of current accounts in Britain that's had no reportable major outages in the last 5 years of operations. So generally, if we do experience fault, if we do experience failure, it's completely seamless to our customers. Another example of where we pushed this is a couple of years ago, we controversially took the decision to turn off our issue tracking system. We don't have an issue tracking system. We don't have a bug tool anymore. And instead, any issue that's identified, any fault that's reported by customers, we handle as an incident. It goes through our incident management process because it's impacting somebody. And so whatever we're doing, we should stop and we should fix this problem first. And by doing that, you have really well-drilled, well-honed incident management procedures that everyone knows their role, they know what they're doing, and they're comfortable. And so again, if something does go wrong unexpectedly, your team responds very well and very calmly to it, and coupled with a system that you can build and deploy in hours, we can generally fix the fault before it's exposed to the outside world. So hopefully that's given a bit of an insight in how we've set up our organization to have agility right the way through to its core, by enabling and empowering people to do what is right, and building an environment around them that encourages and empowers people to make change at every level of the organization. I love talking about the stuff. I could talk for hours if you want me to carry on and talk about any aspect of banking, business models, digital transformation, technology, etc. I was an engineer in a past life. Very, very happy to carry on, but I will leave it there today. And again, if you're interested in learning more about the technology and what we're doing with the engine business, do come and talk to me. I don't know if we have time for any questions, but
Yes, we
perfect. If not, my contact details are up here as well. So.
Thank you, Sam, for the interesting presentation. If any of our audiences have any questions that would like to ask Sam, it's a great benchmarking example for us at what happened in Sterling Bank in the UK. So, any questions?
Perfect. Again, easy
Great.
right.
Sam, thanks so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Off to your prizes.